Welcome back, MTG Joe here, and we're here today for another installment of our weekly meta breakdown. This is where we kind of look at the top performing decks from Arena Ladder as well as some recent tournaments. The way we're doing this is leveraging Untapped GG, which is a companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, collections, suggests decks, aggregates all the user win rate data, and kind of puts together these nice tables that we see here with win rates, deck compositions, stuff like that. It's free to use to start off. The link is in the video description down below if you want to take a look and install it. It runs alongside your Mac or PC. So jumping into it, we're looking at Historic for this video. If you're interested in Standard, it's a separate video. You can find it in the playlist. We do these weekly, so you can take a look there. And we're going to look at Historic Best of 1 first, then move to Best of 3. Now it's a little tricky. Normally, right now it's February 27th, so usually for Standard I did 20 to 27th for the week. I'm actually doing about a 2-week span just based on data available right now for Historic. So this is the 10th to the 27th. Notably, we had the rebalance of Alchemy that took place on the 24th, and Fires of Invention was unbanned and kind of nerfed to 5 mana. So we'll look at that hopefully next week. I actually had a bit of success in Best of 1 with Fires. We tried a couple different Fires of Invention decks. I used it to kind of lock into the top 500 Mythic with 25 hours left in like the 500 Mythics with the Jeskai version, which I'll show you afterwards. But kind of looking 10th to 24th, Platinum to Mythic, 100,000 game sample size. And the first deck we're looking at is Selesnya Enchantress. So this is a deck that's been around a while. So you're using Sythis, Harvest Hand, as well as Enchantress Presence to draw cards every time you cast a enchantment. So pretty much everything in your deck cycles. And you have a prison lock of 9 lives in Solemnity, which means you cannot take damage. There's ways to break this, either Stomp by Bonecrusher Giant or Questing Beast are ways to get around damage protection. So kind of a way to break that. They play Sterling Grove as a way to protect all their enchantments. And we have a couple new cards in the deck. You have Jukai Naturalist, which reduces the cost of your enchantments. And then the decks have now started playing some copies of Hallowed Haunting, which we've seen in the Standard version more recently, but it's a way for them to, every time they cast an enchantment, to kind of accrue value there. And there's actually an infinite mana combo here. So if you attach Gauntlets of Light onto a Sanctum Weaver, and as long as you have 4 or more enchantments, you net mana every time you untap with it. And then what you do is with all that infinite mana, you pump it into Destiny Spinner to animate your lands, and then you can basically animate your entire mana base and then swing in with Trample on your opponent. So kind of a combo-esque element with the deck. You also have Approach of the Second Sun as a backup win condition. If you're looking for these deck lists, by the way, I always include a sampling of them in the export form in the video description, so you can import those as well. We see Squirrel Twin in a couple versions. This deck's usually always at the top of Best of 1 ladder. And basically, it's the infinite token creature, life infinite, being as fast as you can click on Arena, because we don't have a repeat all process. So Scurry Oak plus Heliod plus any way to gain a life when a creature enters the battlefield. So Lunarch Veteran, Soul Warden, Prosperous Innkeeper, or we see the version down here playing a Johnny's Welcome, creates an infinite loop. Life gain trigger goes on the stack. You put a counter on a creature. You put the counter on Scurry Oak. Scurry Oak creates a creature which triggers a life gain, which puts a counter on Scurry Oak, which creates a squirrel. And then that's where the squirrel infinite loop comes. Then you have the backup plan of Voice of the Blessed as well as Trelasarra to just make big creatures as well. A deck that's been around the fringes, we had 1 week where it was the top dog, is the Civic Merfolk deck. It's a kind of a tempo control deck. When Burns around or heavy kind of removal, it's not as good, but it does allow you kind of just juke your opponent, your things scale. You have Lords in the way of Master of Pearl Trident, Merfolk Mistbinder, Merrow Reejerey to untap. Sylvian also gives protection and draws you cards. Glasspool can copy things, and it's a collected company shell. So kind of playing around with that. Some copies of Spell Pierce. So kind of that tempo-y deck. I usually find playing with and against Merfolk, either you're going to absolutely destroy your opponent or just get absolutely wrecked. It is kind of a assembly of the parts deck. It gets better the more you commit to the board, but then when you get swept, it hurts extra hard. We have Mono Green Elves, another deck that's usually always kind of around. Really looking at the deck. So like this deck here, for example, I've never played Elves just because I need like 7 and 4 rare and mythic wild cards, and a lot of these cards are only good for Elves, so it's a little worse for kind of, you know, if you get a Bone Crusher Giant, you could put it in a bunch of different decks. You get a Elvish Clan Caller, you're only playing it in this deck, but we're seeing the Freyleys come in. You're kind of juking up your mana into Craterhoof range to smack your opponent. We're going to have a number of variations of mono red aggro, but the core of the deck is your Reckless Ringleader to give haste to your threats. And then you have this version's kind of like the older version with Annex, Torbrand, Chain Whirler, Cleave. For a while, like a lot of the decks are moving away from Cleave, with the meta moving away from some control decks. It's a way to kind of chop through damage. I like Rampaging Ferocidon in this deck. I play Chandra's 3 and 4. I also play Static Discharge over the Torbrands. I like the Roiling Vortex. We see how much of life gain is relevant, so being able to shut that off and then pressure the control decks as well is really good. Also just more copies of Bone Crusher seems right. Rakdos Arcanist. So there's a Lurrus version and the non-Lurrus version. The non-Lurrus version plays Seasoned Pyromancer, Sorin, and Chandra. I've kind of liked that version a little bit better because it's not all in on the graveyard. This is the graveyard version. But, you know, discard your opponent's hand, flashback spells with Dreadhorde Arcanist, get Kroxa, kind of kill your opponent that way. See, Mardu Vehicles. This is a new deck, but basically what you're trying to do with this deck as early as turn 2 technically, but turn 3 really. I'll explain in a sec, but you want to cycle through your deck, put cards into your graveyard. You want to put into your graveyard a Parhelion, which is a 8 mana vehicle, flying first strike vigilance. When it attacks, you get 2 4/4 flying vigilance angels that are also attacking. So what you do is you put this in your graveyard, you cast Greasefang, you reanimate the Parhelion, you crew it with Greasefang, you attack in with Parhelion, hit for 13 in the air, and then you're left with 8 power of angels on the board. Now, the way you can turn to it is Faithless Looting. You need to discard specifically Greasefang and the Parhelion, and then you can't stay awake your Greasefang on turn 2. More likely, and when I've been playing this deck, I played the Madness version. Very similar idea, but it's turn 3 typically. You'll discard the cards and then cast this naturally. You have Goblin Engineer that can also tutor the specific pieces of your combo that are artifact based into the graveyard. We see another Enchantress build, very similar, kind of the older version with Sigil the Empty Throne. Auras is always going to be a deck that's popular, blue-white in this case. A little bit creature heavier version, actually more creatures than enchantments, so this version here will have a lower likelihood that you're going to get hands where you can't hit new stuff, but also you'll probably more often than not just have Grizzly Bears. But stuff like Esper Sentinel's good on its own. Hushbringer turns off the green-white company deck. You have protection as well baked into there. Sorry, my dog heard me talking from behind the door and wanted to get in here and hear all about the historic meta. Next up, Jeskai Creativity, basically the Is It Bzzd combo, the Locus God combo. So if you're not seeing how this works, you get artifacts or token creatures, so stuff like Hard Evidence, or where'd you go, Prismari Command, or the Magma Opus treasure token, even Unexpected Windfall. You X2 the Indomitable Creativity. Indomitable Creativity puts out Sage of the Falls as well as Locus God. Sage says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may draw and discard a card. Locus God says whenever you draw a card, you create an insect with haste. This creates an infinite loop based on the number of cards in your library. You can create that many hasty insects that kill your opponent. The Jeskai element of it is really our old friend, Teferi, Time Raveler, nerfed, buffed, scaled. Basically, you're casting this against the control decks, anything with removal, so you're kind of protected the turn you go off. Similarly, you'll see stuff like Pact of Negation as a way to protect yourself as well. Also as the backup plan of just, turn 3 turn 3 Magma Opus, turn 2 Magma Opus, turn 3 Mizzix Mastery. Sorry, it's been a long day. To make you be able to cast this on turn 3, which is pretty good. An interesting deck, and I kind of want to try this out. It's a mono red storm deck. So you're using like Dragon Rage Chandler, Runaway Steamkin, Burgi, a bunch of just cheap cantrips. What's this do? Target creature can't block this turn, but you're basically cycling through your deck. You have Underworld Breach to cast cards from your graveyard, creating a bunch of mana, everything like that. Burgi creates mana, Runaway Steamkin creates mana. You're going to find Wish, and then you could either like Grape Shot your opponent, or if you have enough treasure tokens, you can Tendrils, you can Jace Wielder, Galvanic Relay. I didn't even know this card was in the format. I'd probably just play a copy of Grape Shot main as well. But kind of a cool deck, 58% win rate, seems like it's doing stuff. We got Reanimator, notably no Jhin, this version's got Coma in it. Divine Purge seems really sweet in the deck. This card's been really good even in the Fires deck. We got Rakdos Goblins, Jeskai Control, Gearhulk, which we've seen, some Auras, Esper Vehicles, another similar concept. I like Mardu better. This one's got like a little bit more control elements, but Mardu gets to the point, kills him faster with Faithless Looting, does what you do with Chart a Course, but on turn 1 for half the mana, and you get flashback out of it. Phoenix, okay win rate, but we'll see in best of 3. It's kind of the go-to deck. We got Dragonstorm, Infinite Combo, Esper, Sacrifice, that were kind of in the dumpster tiers. Grixis Bolus. This is a deck that's probably killer for wild cards and terrible for performance. The old Mana Form, Hellkite, Dragon God. This is a Fires of Invention deck if I ever saw one. Mono Red Phoenix, not as good of a win rate, and we're kind of in the dumpster tiers. So best of 3. We got, is it Phoenix? So this one here, Feb 10th. I had to go down to gold to get a good population size, but we can actually just keep it. Let me take a look. Okay, so it's 18,000 versus 20,000. Is it Phoenix? Both variations, the highest played. We're seeing versions that are opting for less all-in graveyard. So they do have the graveyard element, but copies of Crackling Drake and Stormwing coming back in. If we look at the spell package, the same. One Fading Hope, one Mystical Dispute. This version's completely off Lava Axe. It's less all-in at the graveyard. Unholy Heats just seems like a better card all around. And then you got stuff like for Teferis, just another Crackling Drake, Bone Crusher to break 9 lives. This is a card you're seeing a lot in the sideboards now. Just another good threat. Gets around 3 base damage, Abrade, stuff like that, and draws you cards in that version. Squirrel Twin combo. Most of the best 3 versions run a Johnny's Welcome. Just it's less susceptible to creature removal. Having one of your 3 combo pieces not be hit by targeted removal. But like creature removal helps out quite a bit. And then we see 5-color Niv, which usually has some variations to it. This deck's kind of a fan favorite, but I've never really liked, like, you're without the Caryatid from Pioneer, without like Omnath, without Nahiri. Like there's good cards that you just don't play in this version. You do get the Kavu, which some games, turn 2 Kavu, 4/4/5/5 type thing. Could just beat down your opponent. So we'll get to a couple more best of 3 decks in a sec. Actually, let's do that now. So this is MTG Melee, for those of you who are unfamiliar. It is where all the online tournaments are hosted. So you can see here from historic, there's a bunch of tournaments that took place. You can take a look when they happened, the number of participants, and then for each of them. So this was kind of a more recent one, but you can even look at the DGen, 115 people. So you can see which decks did well. if you want to import stuff like that. So I won't go through all of these, but I will include this link in the description. So if you want more best of 3 lists, this is a good kind of way to see what are the top performing tournament decks. Lastly, what have I been playing? What have I been doing well with for the historical format? Can I filter? Can't do it just by historic here, but Jeskai Firewalkers. So I've played a couple of different versions of Fires of Invention. It's one of my favorite cards ever. I have the deck in paper in Pioneer before the pandemic. Played it once and then had it sitting in a box behind me. But we got the Firewalkers deck. I've been playing around with this. I got up to 527 Mythic with it. Don't know why this refuses to update. It's because the thing crashed. I had to restart the client the last game. So the deck itself, what we're trying to do. So it's not the Cavaliers version of the deck. What we're trying to do is play kind of a Jeskai value control deck with a bunch of Planeswalkers. So the goal is to build the deck in a way where if you're not necessarily winning through... sorry, I was going to pull up Twitter, but... you need to play the deck as though you don't have fires out and have a good backup plan. When you have fires out, it does allow you value. So with fires, the whole thought is, sweeper removal plus planeswalker to protect itself or to give you a card advantage. And every turn, you're going to kill something or interact, plus get you some accrued card advantage. There's ways to kind of funnel your extra mana. You have like Omen of the Sea to sacrifice to scry. You have Shark Typhoon, which you could cycle. You have the channel lands. You have castles. A lot of ways to kind of use your mana each turn, even when you're not. Kenrith, some copies. Got some YouTube comments. Why are you playing Kenrith if you're not playing any creatures? Well, you're not really trying to haste out. A big thing is with Fires of Invention, it now costs 5 mana. So you can't turn 4 Fires, turn 2, play 2 Cavaliers. The best you're going to do is turn 5 Fires, play 1 Cavalier, don't have the mana to activate it, and you just have this 5/5 in Historic, where chances are you're dead. Kenrith has actually been really good, mainly just for its blue and white abilities. Gain 5 life each turn. I was playing against Mono Red. I was stuck at 1 life for a couple turns. Kenrith came down. Well, guess what? Gain 10 life every turn. You know what your opponent can't have a good time with? Dealing 10, 15 extra damage every turn when you're gaining. Also, just card advantage. It's a way to sink your mana, draw you a bunch of cards, refill. This is a hard cast Shark game a lot. I've liked the Chandras as a sweeper, also encounterable versus the control decks. 1 Teferi, big Teferi. Again, well, you can't play at instant speed, but this untaps your utility lands. It gets you extra Kenrith activations, extra castle activations, stuff like that. Also, Tux gets you card advantage. Keeping Alive, Unholy Heat, very useful card. We have Lightning Helix for the life gain. Divine Purge, I cannot say how good this card has been in Best of 1. Against the Creativity combo, I ate all their treasures, all their tokens. So copies of Prismari Command. I was playing 1 originally. There's a YouTube video on this. It's a slightly older version, but it's pretty much, I'd say, like 95% the same deck. I've just been making some like minor revisions around the edges, as you can see. Just like tweaking little things here and there as we go on. But it's pretty much largely the same. One of Fae, I started with 2, but it was usually too slow. So it's kind of just a break in case of emergency. I'll be completely honest, I've cast Fae more as a 1/4 blocker on turn 2 than anything else. We got Teferi 4, we got Day of Judgments, Wrath of Gods, Narsets as well. For Chandra 4s, kind of paired all with it. The Wishboard's a commit to memory to play with Narset, Conquer's Death, another Teferi, Farewell, Thought Distortion, and some ultimatums for value. So done well with that deck. That's kind of my favorite one that I've been playing thus far in Historic, but give you some ideas. There's, like I said, there's a YouTube video on that if you want to check it out. I played a mono red version as well as a Rakdos version. Chandra Fires did 2-0 in ranked. Played a bunch off ranked as well, did pretty well. The Rakdos version, where'd you go? Rakdos Fire 2-2. The mono red one was actually not too bad. I was playing it more like a prison shell, so we had Karns, both Karns, Golos to get free value. A lot more Chandras. Had some decent matchups, but was a fun deck nonetheless. All of these were played in Mythic numbers, so I'll give you an idea there. But anyways, thank you for watching. Link a bunch of these deck lists in the video description if you want to try it out. If you have cool Fires of Invention lists, definitely let me know. Like I said, one of my favorite cards. But let me know any other cool decks you've been playing, things that have been working out well for you in the comments, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.